Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're well. It's Rabbi Akiva Males, and today is Wednesday. It is January the 19th, and we are getting ready for Parshas Yisro. I want to share some Divrei Torah with you on the Parsha, some items that I came across this week that I hope will enhance your understanding of the Parsha as well. So in Parshas Yisro, Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law, Yisro, he comes to join the Jewish people at the beginning of the Parsha, and he's accompanied by Tzipporah, by Moshe's wife, and the boys. There are two boys. The pasuk doesn't tell us this straight out, but Rashi points it out that at the end of Parshas Shemos, we saw that Moshe was coming back to Egypt from Midian together with Tzipporah and the boys. So what are they doing now with Yisro? So he says that on their way to Egypt, when they bumped into Aaron said, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea for you to bring your wife and kids to Egypt. We have enough Jews in slavery going through difficult times. It's a very traumatic experience. Why do you want to add more Jews into the mix? So Moshe says, again, this is not in the pasuk. This is our Torah Shabbal Peh. This is our commentators, what their tradition is. And Moshe says to Aaron, that's a very good point. And he asks his wife Tzipporah to go back home to Midian, to her parents' home. And when it's safe, then you'll rejoin us. And that's what's going on at the beginning of this parsha. That Yisro is joining the Jewish people, and he's bringing back with him Tzipporah and the boys, Moshe's boys, and that's when they rejoin, become a family once again. What this means, according to all this, by the way, is what this means is that Moshe Rabbeinu's own wife and children did not witness the plagues. They did not witness the splitting of the sea. They did not witness the Exodus, these greatest moments in Jewish history. And we'll soon see there's a machlokas, there's a dispute when Yisro came. Did he come before the giving of the Torah or after? So that would mean, according to the opinion, he came after the giving of the Torah. That would mean that Moshe Rabbeinu's own wife and kids did not witness the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai. Again, according to the other opinion, he came before the giving of the Torah, but it was definitely after the splitting of the sea and after the Makos. According to everybody, that means Moshe's own wife and kids did not have firsthand knowledge of the plagues of the Makos and Mitzrayim, and also did not have firsthand knowledge. They didn't experience by themselves. They did not experience Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea. Absolutely fascinating when you stop to think about that. Well, let's jump into the psukim. We're going to see some Divrei Torah this week relating to this first part of the parsha about Yisro's joining. The parsha then goes on with the Aseres Hadibros, the giving of the Torah, but we're not going to deal with that this morning. We're really going to be focusing on the beginning of the parsha when Yisro joins the Jewish people. So let's see. The pasuk Aleph says, Vayishma Yisro Kohen Midian, and Moshe's father-in-law, whose name was Yisro, he was a Kohen Midian. Kohen could mean different things. Kohen could mean a priest. It could mean a high official. Here they translate as a chieftain. So it just means someone of a high position. So Yisro was a high ranking in Midian. Chosei Moshe was the father-in-law of Moshe. As Kol Asher Asa Elokim LaMoshe Yisrael. He heard about all the amazing things that God had done for Moshe and the Jewish people, Amo's people. He Hotzi Hashem es Yisrael miMitzrayim. And he specifically heard this amazing news, how God Almighty had taken the Jewish people out of Egypt. Let's see Rashi. Rashi says that he heard as Kol Asher Asa. He heard about all the stuff that Hashem had done for Moshe and the Jewish people. What specifically did he hear? So Rashi says as Kol Asher Asa, Lehem, that he did for them, B'yiridas Haman, incredible miracle how he brought down the man, that heavenly bread, U'ba'er, that he created this miracle, that a rock was flowing water coming out of it in order to give them hydration in the wilderness. Amalek, and also that they were attacked by Amalek, and even though they were this newly redeemed people who had just coming out of bondage, they were successful in their struggle with Amalek. So Rashi brings down, those are the miracles that Yisro heard what Hashem had done for the Jewish people. What's amazing is just 8 psukim later in pasuk Tes, we see the pasuk says, Vayichad Yisro. Now, what does that mean? He translated here according to the first pshat of Rashi. Vayichad Yisro means Yisro was glad, he was happy. Al kol tova asher asa Hashem liYisrael. He was so happy about all the amazing things that Hashem had done for the Jewish people. Asher hitzilo miyad Mitzrayim, and he had rescued them from Egypt. Let's see the Rashi there. So Rashi, the first one just says Vayichad Yisro. Yisro was happy. Okay, Vayismach, that he was happy. Look at the next one. Al Kol HaTova. He was happy about all of the good. So what was all the good? So Rashi says Tovas Haman, the great gift that Hashem Jewish people, that there was man, that we were being sustained by this heavenly bread in the wilderness where there was no food. Be'er, the fact that we had fresh flowing water in the wilderness where there should not have been any. V'hatorah, and the third aspect that he was so happy about was that we had been given the Torah. Yal Kulan, and even the greatest of all this, Asher Tzilu Miyad Mitzrayim, that Hashem saved, redeemed the Jewish people from the Egyptians. Until now, no slave had ever escaped Egypt. It was a locked up land that they had very secure borders. The Elu, and look at this people, Yatsu Shishim Ribo, 600,000 men, that's just the men, were the ones who left. Once you count in the women, the elderly, and the kids, you're looking at millions of people. I never noticed this before, but look at this, there's a discrepancy. At the top of the page, the first Rashi we saw, that Rashi that said, Es Kol Asher Asa, there were three items that Yisro heard about that had made him come to see for himself what was going on. It said, Rashi, the first Rashi said up there, you read that Haman, the fact that the man fell, the air, the fact that we had this water in the wilderness, of Amalek, that we had been attacked by Amalek and won. Now look at this Rashi, Al Kol HaTova. Rashi says, what were the three things that jumped out at him? Tovas Haman, that lines up, that here we were in the wilderness where there was no food, nothing growing, and yet we had this heavenly bread. Be'er, that lines up, number two, that here we were in the wilderness where there was no natural water sources, and we had this constant source of water that God miraculously provided for us. But number three, up above, number three was Amalek. Here, number three is HaTorah. So what's going on? Rashi just 8 psukim apart. He, so to say, he broke his he broke from what he had set up earlier. Earlier, he had told us that what does it mean? What does it mean that it was Es Kol Asher Asa, everything that God had done for the Jewish people? And he said the primary three was the Man, the Be'er, and Amalek. And here he says the primary three is the Man, the Be'er, and the Torah. Why the discrepancy? I don't think I ever really noticed this before, but I want to show you someone who does address this. This is one of the commentators on Rashi, Rav David Halevi Siegel, otherwise known as the Taz, for his famous commentary to the Shulchan Aruch called the Turei Zav. He also wrote a commentary on Rashi called Divrei David. The Taz was one of the leaders of Polish Jewry in the 1600s. So this is an Acharon. This is one of our later commentators. And as you'll see, he wrote this running commentary on Rashi. So he brings this point up. He wants to know, why does the Parsha begin? And Rashi tells us that the three things he heard was the Man, the Be'er, and Amalek. And then when it says Vayichad Yisro, that he was so filled with so much joy, it says the Man, the Be'er, and the Torah. Why is the third one different? So let's see what the Taz does. Taz says Al Kol HaTova. He's going on Pasuk Taz when he says that he was overjoyed because of the Man, the Be'er, and the Torah. He says Tovas Haman Be'er Torah Le'el, but earlier in the Parsha in Pasuk Aleph, when Rashi said as Kol Asher Asa, how did Rashi learn what was Kol, what was everything? Here it says Kol HaTova was these three, Man, Be'er, and Torah. But earlier when it said Kol Asher Asa, it didn't say it didn't say Torah, it said Amalek. Lo chashav HaTorah ela Amalek. It didn't say HaTorah for item number 3, it said Amalek. So earlier the three was Man, Be'er, and Amalek. Here it's Man, Be'er, and Torah. Why the discrepancy? So look what the Taz says. Lefi sheyesh plugta, there is a machlokes, im Yisro ba kodem matan Torah or achar matan Torah. When exactly did Yisro show up? Was it before the giving of the Torah or after? V'Rashi, in Rashi on Pasuk Aleph, when he wanted to say why Yisro came to join the Jewish people, Rashi wrote Salafarish Aliba the Kule Alma. Rashi didn't want to provide an explanation that's only going to work according to one opinion. He wanted to provide an explanation. Why did Yisro join? What did he hear? What was all the good news? He wanted to say that it was for 3 items that would fit according to everybody. Man, that came before the giving of the Torah, it was thereafter. The Be'er, the water, that was there before and after. And Amalek, the fact that we were saved from Amalek, that's something that he could have heard about, and that'll fit with both opinions. Whether he came before the giving of the Torah or after, the attack of Amalek had already occurred. But if above it had said, Man, Be'er, and Torah, then Rashi is boxing himself into a corner, that he only could work according to the opinion that Yisro showed up after the Torah was given. Because if he showed up before the Torah was given, you can't say that it was Kol Asher Asa, everything that God has already done. He hasn't given the Torah yet. So up above, Rashi was trying to work out according to everybody, whether Yisro showed up before or after. So let's see what he says here. So he goes, Rashi up above in Pasuk Aleph wants to work out according to all opinions. That's why he did not want to mention up above Sheshama Yisro Matan Torah, that Yisro heard about the giving of the Torah of Undiscovered. And that's why he wanted to come and to convert and join the Jewish people, because the Torah wasn't given yet. This is according to one opinion. That can't work according to the opinion that Yisro showed up before the giving of the Torah. So again, the reason why on Pasuk Aleph, Rashi says, Man, Be'er, and Amalek, is because he wants to work according to all opinions. If he would have said Man, Be'er, and Torah, it would only work according to the opinion that says Yisro showed up after the giving of the Torah. But he wants to explain why Yisro would have come according to everybody, even according to the opinion that he came before the giving of the Torah. Therefore, item number 3 can't be the Torah, it has to be Amalek. But what about in Pasuk Tes? When it says that Yisro was so filled with joy, why there was it okay to say the Torah? So look what he does now. Aval gabe vayichad Yisro. But later in Pasuk Tes, when it says that Yisro was so happy for what Klal Yisro, what the Jewish people had experienced, Asi Shapir, that could work out. Afilu Laman Damar Koda Matan Tarba. This could work out even according to the opinion that Yisro showed up before the giving of the Torah. This Pasuk that says that he was so happy, this isn't limited to one point in time, saying, why was Yisro so happy when he first showed up? This could be talking about why Yisro was so happy, overjoyed. You could have caught him 20 years later and asked Yisro, what were you so happy about? And he could have said the big 3 was the Man, Be'er, and the Torah. But Pasuk Aleph is limited to an exact point on the calendar. It's saying Vayishma Yisro, that Yisro heard, and now he comes to join the Jewish people. You have to tell me, what did he hear before he joined the Jewish people? So that has to be Man, Be'er, and Amalek. But later, when you're going on Vayichad Yisro, Yisro was so happy, that's not limited to because he was happy, that's why he came. Someone after he showed up, he was happy. So that could be talking about later on, down the line, after the Torah was given. That's what he's going to say. That could work even according to the opinion that Yisro showed up before the Torah was given. If you would ask, this pasuk is just saying that Yisro at some point in his life was very happy. He was very happy because of everything that had occurred for the Jewish people. Before the Torah was given, he would say, why was he so happy for the Jewish people? Because of the man, because of the bear. And after the Torah was given, he said, why was he so happy? He'll throw on a third because they got the Torah. Masha'enkin, as opposed to Pasuk Aleph, B'Shamav and Iskayer, when the Pasuk wants to know what specifically did he hear that caused him to come and to convert, that's talking about one specific point in time. And there, you can't have it both ways. You have to say, okay, at one specific point in time, what did he hear and come? So now you say, okay, well, when did Yisro show up? Was it before or was it after? So Rashi wants to offer an opinion that could work according to everyone. But later, when it's saying Vayichad Yisro, Yisro was very happy for Klal Yisrael, you don't have to box yourself into a corner because there's no reason to say that was written, that pasuk was written about one specific moment in Yisro's life. It could have been before, it could have been after. It's just telling us the fact. Yisro was very happy for Klal Yisrael. You want to tell me he was happy before the giving of the Torah? Okay, he was happy for the man and for the bear. You want to tell me he was happy after the giving of the Torah? Okay, he was happy for the man, bear, and the giving of the Torah. That's that pasuk. Pasuk Tes isn't limited to one specific point. However, Pasuk Aleph is. That's how the Taz wants to deal with this. All right, I thought that was a very interesting approach. And again, just to see that he was paying attention and that there is a discrepancy between those two Rashis, but he makes sense of it. Let's see a little further. After we're on page 2, after Yisro shows up in Pasuk Zion, it says Vayetze Moshe lekras chosno. Moshe goes out to greet his father-in-law, who's Yisro. Vayishtachu, he bows down when he sees him. Vayishaklo, and he gives him a big kiss. Vayishalu ish l're'eu l'shalom. Each one asks the other how they're doing. They give each other peaceful greetings. And then they enter a tent where they're going to have a meal. That's the pasuk. Moshe's so happy to see him. He bows down. He gives him a big kiss. They ask each other how they're doing. Let's go to the next source, which is the Tur Shulchan Aruch. The Tur Shulchan Aruch was an earlier version that the Shulchan Aruch is going to be based on. And here in Hilchos Kibud Avayim, where he's talking about the laws of honoring one's parents, we're going to see both the beginning and all the way at the end of that. Let's see what he says at the beginning. It says, mitzvah saseh, there is a positive Torah command, that a person has to honor and show respect to their father and mother. He also has to be in awe of them. A person should be very, very cautious about honoring, respecting the parents, and for giving them the proper sense of awe. Because God equates the awe that we have for our parents to the way we should be relating to God. All the way at the end of that paragraph, and that's why I have those 3 dots. A person is also obligated to show honor to their in-laws, to their father-in-law, specifically the chamav. Chamosav would be the mother-in-law, so chamav would be the father-in-law. How do we know that a person is obligated to show respect to the father-in-law? D'chsiv, he goes to quote, I have to look this up, it's a pasuk from Shmuel Aleph. David HaMelech says to Shaul, Avi, my father. Now, David was not Shaul's son, he was a son-in-law, because David's wife was Michal, who was the daughter of Shaul. That was his first wife, was Michal bas Shaul. So therefore, he says to Shaul, Avi, Re'ei Gamrei, please take a look and see. We'll soon see what the context of that was. So the tour goes all the way to David HaMelech. He goes all the way to Nevi'im, to Shmuel Aleph, to say, you know how I know that you're obligated to show respect to your father-in-law? Because David HaMelech called Shaul Avi. So if he called him Avi, he's calling him his father. That means he has to relate to him like he would to a father, which means he has to give him all the same kavod, all the same respect and honor as he would for his real father. Okay, that's what he says. Let's just look at the context. The context of that, of David calling Shaul Avi, is at a really strained point into their relationship. We know that late in Shaul's life, he became very paranoid of David and was actually hunting him down to kill him. And the pasuk tells us of an incident that happened, that David and his band were hiding out in a cave, and Shaul came looking for him to kill him with a whole armed force. And Shaul goes into this cave, and he says once he's in the cave, he's going to relieve himself. While he's there, David cuts away a corner of his cloak as proof, saying, look, I'm really not out to get you. You don't have to be scared of me, Shaul. And here's the proof. If I wanted to get you, here's a piece of your cloak I cut off. I could have killed you, but I didn't. So what do you see? I'm not out to get you, so stop hunting me down. Let's see the psukim. Yud, when David confronts Shaul about this, Vayomer David l'Shaul, David says to Shaul, Loma tishmas divrei adam lemor. Why are you listening to those who are kind of trying to get you all worked up? And those who are saying, Hine David mevakesh rasecha. Why are you listening to anybody who may be giving you this baloney, this false knowledge that I'm out to hurt you? Yud Aleph. Hine hayom hazeh ro'ei einecha. On this very day is your day your own eyes have seen, as asher nasancha Hashem hayom biyadi, that God put you into my hands. If I wanted to get you, I could have got you. V'amara, you were in the same cave as me. V'amar lahargacha. And one said to kill you, meaning like there was part of me was saying, maybe I should just kill you because you're hunting me down. I'll put an end to this. But my soul had pity on you. And I said, I will not put a hand on my master, ki Mashiach Hashemu, because he's been anointed by God. I'm not going to hurt you. And now here's the proof. Yud Beis, va'avi, and my father, re'ei gam re'ei. See, take a good look. As kanaf milcha biyadi, I'm holding in my the corner of your cloak. Ki birchasi as kanaf me'alecha. I cut off. I used my blade. I had a knife. I cut off this corner of your cloak. V'lo hiragticha, and I didn't kill you. Meaning the same ease with which I slipped off this corner of your cloak, I could have slit your throat, but I didn't do that. Darei, so know and see, ki ein biyadi ra. I have no intent to harm you. V'pesha v'lo chatasi, and there's no transgressions. I have not sinned against you. Lach v'atot sodes nashilakata. And nonetheless, you're stalking me and you're trying to take my life and my soul. Enough of this already. That's what David was saying to Shaul. So it's kind of an ironic twist where the Torah is going. The Torah wants to prove that a person has to show kavod to their father-in-law. Where does he go? Oh yeah, David called Shaul Avi. Yeah, he said Avi. So if he called him Avi, my father, it means he has to relate to him like a father, which meant he had to be mechabed him. He had to show him kavod. So that's how you know a person's got to show kavod to his in-laws. It happens to be the context is shocking because again, as you see here, the context is in the middle of a very, very bitter point in the relationship between Shaul and David. And here was David going out of his way to prove he's not out to harm Shaul. That's the context which he called him Avi. Okay, be that as it may, that's where the Torah goes to bring a proof that a person is obligated to show kavod to their father-in-law. I want to share with you, I saw a sefer this week, quote, I'm not that familiar with this work, a sefer called Pardes Mordechai. I looked up the author. I could not find much on the author, but I think I did see it was published in Munkach. I could be wrong. I think I saw it was published in Munkach back in the old country. But let's see what he says. He asks a very good question. It's on this parsha, and he says as follows: Hamefarshim makshim ala Torah. There are commentaries. I'm assuming that means on the page of the Torah. There's the Beis Yosef. There's commentaries that ask a question on the Torah. The Siman Reish Mem in this section of the Shulchan in the Torah Shulchan Aruch, the Yalef shetzrichim lizar b'kavod chosno miDavid. That look at this strange incident. The Torah, when he wants to prove that a person has to show honor to their father-in-law, where does he go? He goes to David. Goes all the way to Nevi'im. Shekara l'Shaul Avi, because he called Shaul, his father-in-law, he called him Avi. Halo nishma gam mi Moshe. Why did the Torah have to go all the way to Nevi'im, to Shmuel Aleph, if you want to show me that there's an obligation to show kavod to a father-in-law? Why don't you just go to Moshe in the Torah? We're all much more conversant with Chamisha Chumshei Torah. We read every Shabbos a parsha, and we see it in Yisro, that Moshe showed a tremendous amount of kavod to his father-in-law, to Yisro. Says, Nishma Gami Moshe, learn it from Moshe. Shekibet es Yisro. He showed great kavod to Yisro. That he bowed down to him, he kissed him. So why don't we just go to Moshe? Why is the tour got to go all the way to Nevi'im, to this episode in Shmuel Aleph that not everyone's familiar with? You got to look up the context and you're scratching your head saying, that's where you got to go. Why don't you just look at Moshe here in Parshas Yisro? Good question. Look at what the Pardes Mordechai answers. The Efshar Lomar, perhaps you can explain as follows. The Shani Yisro. Yisro is an exception. You can't learn necessarily. It's not a convincing argument to say, oh, Moshe showed kavod to Yisro, so now you know you got to show kavod to your father-in-law. That's not a convincing argument. Why? The Shani Yisro, perhaps Yisro is different. Have a ger, because Yisro was also a ger tzedek. So you know why Moshe was going out of his way to show him kavod and love him and embrace him and hug him and kiss him and bow to him? Because that's the love for a ger tzedek. V'ahavta sager. The Torah implores us that we've got to go out of our way to befriend and share our love with a ger tzedek. The Torah, it behooves us to show such love for a ger tzedek, for a convert. Maybe because there was such a great mitzvah of Havta Mesager, that's why Moshe was showing him this love. And he says, that's why he loved him. That's why he kissed him. Maybe, and that's not unique to Yisro. Had another Ger Tzedek showed up at that same time period, Moshe would have given him a big hugging kiss also and bowed to him. And then he says, Visu yesh lomar. And then you could also say, Dimlo aya kirvo ave ka'omer lo zachor masecha rishonim. Because if he did not embrace a Ger Tzedek, it would be as if, why am I not showing him love? It's like I'm saying to him, don't you know where you're coming from? Your erroneous ways from your pagan past? That would be very hurtful. Therefore, Al Kain Yolef mid David v'Shaul. So that's why the tour went to go learn from David and Shaul. The Sham lo shayach hatam elu. Because by David and Shaul, there's no question of any Ger Tzedek. There's no one who was a convert, a righteous convert there. So if David is saying to Shaul, calling him Avi and treating him like his Av, like his own father, that's a good raya. That's a good proof that a person has to show such kavod to their father-in-law. And he says, so what? What do you see? So what do you see? That it must be the reason why David showed such kavod, such respect to Shaul. It had nothing to do with the fact he was a Ger Tzedek. It was all about the fact that it was his father-in-law. So that's why he did that. So that's answer number one of the Parshas Mordechai. You know why we went all the way to, the tour goes all the way to Shmuel Aleph, to Nevi'im, rather than try to prove from Moshe? Because Moshe's not a proof. Maybe Moshe was just showing that amount of love and respect to Yisro because he was a Ger Tzedek, but not because he was his father-in-law. So, okay, therefore we go to David and Shaul, because when David does that, it's clearly because he was his father-in-law. Now he gives the second answer. Look at this next one, on the second line from the bottom. Even without this answer about that, maybe it's because Yisro is a Ger Tzedek, he says it's still not a question. I got a different answer to explain why the tour went to go learn from David and Shaul and did not learn from Moshe and Yisro. Why? The Medrash says that when it says Achar Shilucheha, the Torah told us at the beginning of Yisro that Yisro came to join the Jewish people, and he had with him Tzipporah and Moshe's sons, Achar Shilucha, after Moshe had sent them away, meaning that's what we spoke about all the way at the beginning, that on his way down to Mitzrayim, Aharon had convinced him it didn't make sense to bring them to Mitzrayim, so he sent them back to go be with Yisro. But the Mechilta says Achar Shilucha means a little more than that. Achar Shilucha, according to the Mechilta, means Shegira Shoso. He actually divorced her. He didn't want to separate, say, look, we're about to part ways. I have to go on this mission to Mitzrayim. I don't know if we're ever going to have a chance to, we might get lost. Modern day communication is so different than what was going on in biblical times. We might get separated. I don't want you to be an aguna. I don't want you to be chained and not knowing what happened to your husband. So if we have to separate now, let's separate with a divorce. Hopefully we'll get back together in the future. But in case we don't, and let's say you can't find me, I don't want you to be tied to me. So therefore, Achar Shilucha means when Moshe sent her back to Yisro, they were divorced. If that's the case, Vimkain, Lo Haya Ke'es Chos No Mamish. That means Yisro wasn't his real father-in-law 100% at that point. He first has to remarry Tzipporah before Yisro has a status as a full-blown father-in-law. So, and when he's hugging him and kissing him and bowing to him, that's before he's taken Tzipporah back. So therefore, Elal Korchach mitam ger. So that's what he says. He says therefore he'd say, why was he showing him that kind of love and that kind of respect? Maybe it was nothing to do with the fact he was his father-in-law. He wasn't his father-in-law. Maybe he was just giving him that kind of love and respect because he was a Ger Tzedek. It's a very interesting second answer. So he's got two answers to say. Why did the tour go all the way to Shmuel Aleph in Nevi'im rather than prove from Moshe and Yisro that a person's obligated to respect their father-in-law? Two answers. Answer number one is because maybe you can explain that the reason Moshe showed that kind of love and respect to Yisro is because he was a Ger Tzedek, nothing to do with the fact he was his father-in-law. And answer number two was, according to the Mechilta, according to that Medrash, he really wasn't his halachic father-in-law at this point, not until he remarries Tzipporah. But yet he's still going ahead and hugging him and kissing him. But so how do you explain that? He's not his father-in-law. Okay, he was doing it because he was a ger tzedek, but that seems to be the reason, but not because he was a father-in-law. So therefore, the Torah says, if I want to find the ultimate proof that a person is obligated to show that love and respect to a father-in-law, I got to go to David and Shaul. And once I go to David and Shaul, no one's got a way to answer that. Perhaps you could even say it made sense to go to David and Shaul, because there the love was only a one-way street at that point in the relationship. And there's a bigger chiddush that David was calling him Avi and felt he was obligated to respect him as his Avi, as his father, even though the love wasn't two ways. He wasn't feeling that love from Shaul at that point. That was something I was thinking about. Maybe it makes more sense to learn it from David and Shaul, that a son-in-law has the obligation to still love the in-laws, even if they're not loving him back. That, to me, that's a bigger chiddush there. But anyhow, but that's a different answer. Maybe someone answers that too. I don't know. That's what hit me as I was learning that. But as we were learning this, as I was looking at this Parshas Mordechai, and he was saying about how important it is, perhaps you can explain Moshe's reaction that he was hugging and kissing Yisro just because he was a ger, and you say, come on, who does that? I want to share with you someone in our own lifetime who did do that, and that is Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. I remembered this, and I looked it up this week because I remembered reading about this at some point in Rav Yaakov's biography. There's a very, very good biography on Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky that ArtScroll put out. A lot of times ArtScroll biographies get a bad rap. I'm not commenting on that, but this is a great one because what they worked with Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky's son, Rav Nassim Kamenetsky, who passed away in the last couple of years, and Rav Nassim Kamenetsky had spent a lot of time digging up a lot of historical details about his father's life, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky's life, and they did a very good job painting a picture of what was going on at that time in Europe in the interwar years when Rav Yaakov was in the Slobodka yeshiva, and then when he was a rav of a small town in Lithuania, and then when he came to America, and then Canada, and then they did a very good job. But anyhow, here, look at this one incident. This was on page 257. To a ger, to a righteous convert, with whom he had become friendly in Muncie, he gave a sweater for a wedding gift instead of the more traditional check. He realized the sweater would give the young man pleasure every time he wore it, when he remembered who had given it to him. And listen to that. You see what was going on? In other words, even though, let's say, normally you'd say that he gave other people checks when they got a wedding. He would give them a nice a check as a gift. For the ger tzedek, he gave a sweater. Why? Because the check, it's going to be deposited once and you forget about it. But the ger tzedek is going to say every time he puts on this sweater, wow, I remember that Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky gave me this and he loved me. So he wanted to say, I wanted to make him feel extra special. I thought, by the way, that's just something nice for us all to think about when we're giving a gift to somebody that we care about and somebody that we love. There's something to be said. I'm not saying give everyone a sweater. What I'm saying is there's something to be said about giving a gift that whenever the person uses it, the person will think of whoever it was who gave it to him or her. That could be very, very meaningful. Now look at this next part that's in the parentheses. This is what I remembered when I saw this from the Parshas Mordechai. In general, Rav Yaakov was extremely sensitive to the feelings of converts. He once hugged a ger to whom he had just been introduced, commenting, he was thereby fulfilling two mitzvahs: love your friend, your fellow Jew as yourself, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, and love the ger, v'ahavta v'sager. I thought that was beautiful. Is that here it was? He's saying, here it is. I hugged you, and look at that. With one hug, I was makayim. I fulfilled two mitzvahs. I've got to love every Jew, and you're a member of Klal Yisrael, so I love you. But also, I have a special reason to love you. So I express some love. I express some admiration to you with this hug on two levels. I was just makayim. I just fulfilled two mitzvahs. I thought that was beautiful. So that's the Parshas Mordechai made me think of that. Is that what was he saying? That maybe that was the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu was kissing and bowing to Yisro. Nothing to do with the fact it was his father-in-law. He was fulfilling the Havta Mesager. So you'd say, who does that? Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. I thought that was very, very interesting. Let's see, one more Divrei Torah I want to share with you. One more. I thought this is fascinating. I'll share this last one with you. The Torah tells that Yisro, shocking, Once Yisro comes, he's a little bit critical about something his son-in-law was doing. He thought, I might have a better idea how you might be able to do this. He didn't like the judicial system that Moshe had set up. Moshe has everyone waiting online to speak to him and clarify halacha. So let's see these psukim, 3 psukim. So Yudalid, Vayar Chosein Moshe es kol asher hu oselam. Yisro takes a good look at the way that Moshe is conducting himself and dealing with the people. And he says, what is this that you're doing for them? Why are you alone sitting? And everyone else is standing up, waiting online from morning to night to speak to you. Moshe says, I'll defend myself. Moshe says to his father-in-law, they're coming to me because they've got questions. They'd like me to seek advice from God. Whenever they have a case, they come to me, and they ask me to judge and to settle the case between them and their friend. And I make known for them what are the statutes of God and his Torah. I inform them. That's what we have. So let's see. I saw something beautiful in Sefer Torah Ladas. Torah Ladas, again, this was something that was compiled by Rav Matis Blum Zatzal. And they have a weekly sheet that would come out. Now they're only printing stuff from the past because Rabbi Blum passed away, unfortunately. But they also have Svarim. And in one of his Svarim, I found this beautiful exchange here. Look at this. Yisro asks Moshe, what's going on? Why are you sitting all by yourself? And everybody else, all the Klais are all standing online waiting for answers, morning to evening. Moshe says back, Moshe says to his father-in-law, everyone's coming to me to find out what is God's will. How do we explain this back and forth? It's what was Yisro really asking? Why are you sitting alone? They're standing, and Moshe says, "Here's my answer. They're coming to me to find out what does God want. What's really going on? What's the real conversation taking place?" Amar Agon Rav Yonasan Ivashitz, going now to the 1700s in Germany. So Rav Yonasan Ivashitz, he has a beautiful way to learn this. There are 2 ways that we can adjudicate a legal dispute. There's something called pshara, which means we want to bring both sides to come to compromise, meaning each one step out a little from their comfort zone. You give a little, and let's make shalom, let's make peace. And then there's din. Din is strict letter of the law. What does halacha require? And when 2 parties are in a dispute, it's up to them to decide and go to Beis Din and say, how do you want to solve the case? Do you want to use pshara or do you want to use din? And it's a Beis Din's job at first to try to get them to go to pshara. We would prefer pshara because then there's no loser. Everyone's a winner. Everyone gave, everyone took, and everyone feels like a winner. It's a healthier situation if there's pshara. So Rav Yonasan says like this, there are some technical differences that when a Beis Din tries to solve a case by pshara, working on an agreement, or ledin, or when they try to solve it based on the pure letter of the law. The bedin, if the litigants choose to go with din, a strict letter of law, tzrichin gimel dayanim, you need 3 judges. With pshara, but if people agree to compromise, sagi b'dayan echad, it's enough just to have 1 judge. Furthermore, there's another difference between solving a case based on pure din and compromise pshara. The bedin, if it's pure din, bale din srichin la'amod. The litigants have to stand. V'adayonim yoshrim, and the judges sit. Pshara, but if it's everyone working out a compromise, rishon gam bale din leishev. Even the litigants are allowed to sit. So again, 2 differences so far. That if you have a din, you're supposed to have 3 dayanim, 3 judges. But if it's pshara, it can be just 1. Another difference. If it's din, then the litigants are supposed to stand while the dayanim, the judges, sit. But if it's a pshara, everyone's allowed to sit. So now let's see a little further. Hine. Now, Isa b'choshen mishpat. The Shulchan Aruch writes clearly in Choshen Mishpat. the bedin, even if the litigants choose to go a din, the pure letter of the law, which we said is supposed to require 3 judges, nami lepamim sagi b'dayan echad. There is a scenario where it's enough to have just one judge. Let's say the litigants agree. They say there's like one master judge who's out there, and we agree that we are coming to this master judge, and we are coming with our case, and we are so confident that that person has his act together, we are signing away our rights to 3 judges. We're agreeing on just one judge handling our case. So having known these 3 details, Hashta Nichas, Rabbi Yonasan says, now I can explain what's going on here. The Yisro Shalas Moshe. Yisro sees what's going on. He says, I'm confused. This makes no sense. Either way, any way you slice this. Im bedin ata yoshev. You're sitting down, Moshe. So if you're judging based on din, that and not pshara, based on din, strict letter of the law. So ata yoshev, that would explain why you're sitting. Madua ata yoshev levadecha, but why are you alone? Hello, bedin tzrichim shlosha dayanim. With din, you're supposed to have 3 judges. Why are you sitting all alone? And if the way you're handling these cases is working out compromises, and that's why it's enough just to have one judge, kasha, it also makes no sense. Why are you sitting and the litigants are standing? When it comes to pshara, when it comes to working out a compromise, the litigants are allowed to sit down. So Yisro is saying to Moshe, it doesn't make sense. You're not following your own rules, because look what's going on. You're sitting down, everyone's standing. So if you want to explain that by saying, okay, because you're operating with the din, this is a strict letter of the law, so you should have 2 fellow judges. Why are you by yourself? And if you want to tell me you're operating on pshara, you're operating on compromise, so then why are you standing and the litigants, why are you sitting and the litigants are standing? You all should be sitting. Moshe. So Moshe responds, we are operating on the world of din, pure judgment. So where's my other 2 judges? Why am I doing it alone? I am sitting alone. Meaning this is a case where they approached me on their own volition, and they said, even though you're just one, we want you to judge us. What the litigants say, we're content, we're happy with this one judge, now that's fine, and it can work with a system of din. So this is the way Rabbi Yonasan is wrapping this all up. What had Yisro so confused was it doesn't make any sense. You're sitting and they're standing. I don't get it. If this is din, where's the other 2 judges? Why are you by yourself? And if it's pshara, why aren't the litigants sitting? Why are they having to stand? It seems like you're operating with din, but you're by yourself, to which Moshe responds, they came to me and they all agreed that we want you to judge us, even though you're just one. And the Shulchan Aruch tells us that if you have a case where the litigants say, we want you to judge us, even though you're just one, you can operate on din, even though you don't have a beis din of 3 people. That's the way Rabbi Yonasan wanted to wrap this up. I thought it was very, very clever. I thought it was a very clever way to look at this, taking into account what some of the halachas, the dinim are of beis din, and using that to explain the psukim here. I thought that was very interesting. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.